Men, the most dangerous threat to your relationship isn't the obvious player at the bar or the ex-boyfriend trying to reconnect. It's the coworker she spends 8 hours a day with, who's slowly becoming more attractive to her than you are. Before we dive in, hit subscribe, smash that like and hype button, and drop a comment if you've ever lost a relationship to a coworker you didn't take seriously until it was too late. Your story might help another man recognize when workplace. Proximity is creating attraction that's replacing what she feels for him before the comparison becomes an affair. Sign 1. His name appears constantly in her stories about work. When her coworker's name starts appearing multiple times per day in her conversations about work, showing up in stories about meetings, projects, lunches, coffee breaks, and random workplace interactions, she's not just keeping you informed about her professional life. She's revealing that he occupies significant mental and emotional space in her daily experience. And the frequency with which she mentions him indicates he's become a central character in her life narrative rather than just a background colleague. What this pattern reveals? This reveals he's on her mind constantly throughout her workday, which means they're having enough interactions and creating enough shared experiences that he naturally becomes part of every story she tells. When people mention someone frequently, it indicates that person is psychologically salient to them. They're thinking about them, noticing them, and processing their interactions in ways that make them memorable and story-worthy. Notice the nature of the stories she tells involving him. Are they just functional work updates, or do they include personal details, humor, observations about his personality, or emotional reactions to things he said or did? The more personal and detailed the stories, the more deeply she's paying attention to him as a person rather than just a work colleague. Pay attention to whether she uses his name or just says a coworker or someone at work. Using his name repeatedly indicates familiarity and that he's an individual who matters to her specifically, not just one of many colleagues. The personalization reveals he's transitioned from generic coworker to specific person she's forming a relationship with. Watch how she talks about him compared to other coworkers. If you hear his name 10 times a week but rarely hear about anyone else she works with, the disproportionate attention reveals he's getting special focus in her mental processing of her workday. She's noticing him, remembering interactions with him, and finding him interesting enough to recount these interactions to you. Notice if the stories show increasing familiarity and comfort between them. Early mentions might be professional. John presented in the meeting today. But if the stories evolve to John and I grabbed coffee and talked about, or John said the funniest thing today, the progression shows their relationship is deepening from professional to personal. Pay attention to whether she shares inside jokes they have or references conversations that clearly indicate they talk about personal topics. If she mentions that he knows about her favorite restaurant, her weekend plans, her frustrations with you, or other personal information, they've crossed from professional boundaries into personal relationship territory. Watch her facial expressions and tone when she talks about him. Does she light up, smile more, seem animated and engaged when recounting interactions with him? The positive emotional energy associated with talking about him reveals he's someone who makes her feel good, which is the foundation of attraction. Notice if she compares how he handled situations to how you would handle them, even subtly. John would understand why I'm stressed about this project, implies you wouldn't understand. These comparisons reveal she's actively thinking about how he meets her needs differently than you do. Sign 2. She describes his impressive qualities in detail. When she starts telling you about how smart he is, how funny, how ambitious, how good he is at his job, how well he handles stress, how respected he is by management, or any other positive qualities he possesses, she's not just making objective observations about a colleague's professional competencies. She's revealing that she's cataloging his attractive qualities, noticing aspects of him that impress her, and importantly, she's telling you about these qualities because she's comparing them to what you offer and finding you lacking in areas where he excels. What this pattern reveals: This reveals she's actively evaluating him through an attraction lens rather than a professional lens. Colleagues notice each other's work performance, but they don't typically describe co-workers' qualities in detailed, admiring ways to their partners unless those qualities are creating attraction they're processing. Notice which qualities she emphasizes. If she's going on about his ambition and career trajectory, she's comparing it to your ambition and finding you less driven. If she emphasizes his confidence and leadership, she's comparing it to your hesitance and finding you less impressive. If she highlights his sense of humor, she's comparing it to your ability to make her laugh and finding you less entertaining. Pay attention to whether she uses absolute language, "he's so smart," or "he's incredibly ambitious." Absolute qualifiers reveal strong impressions and emotional reactions. She's not just noticing these qualities, she's impressed by them in ways that are generating positive feelings toward him. Watch whether she compares these qualities to yours explicitly or implicitly. Explicit comparisons are obvious. "John is so ambitious. He's already planning his next promotion. You seem satisfied just staying where you are." Implicit comparisons are subtler, but still present, describing all his impressive qualities while you're exhibiting none of them creates comparison even without direct statements. Notice if she defends him when you point out that she talks about him positively a lot. If she gets defensive and insists she's just acknowledging a competent colleague, the defensiveness reveals she's protecting feelings that go beyond professional respect. She doesn't want you questioning her admiration because she knows it's crossed professional boundaries. Pay attention to whether she's described other co-workers in similar detail. If she's never told you extensive positive qualities about anyone else she works with, the special attention to his qualities reveals he's special to her in ways others aren't. Watch if she mentions things about him that aren't work-related at all. His hobbies, his taste in music, his weekend activities, his fitness routine. If she knows personal details and shares them admiringly with you, they're having personal conversations, and she's interested enough in his life to remember and recount these details. Notice if physical attributes appear in her descriptions. If she mentions he's tall, fit, well-dressed, or has nice eyes, she's noticed him physically in ways that indicate attraction rather than just professional respect. Sign 3, she mentions activities they do together that sound like dates. When she tells you about lunches they've had together, coffee breaks where they talked for an hour, after-work drinks with some people from the office, where he was the only other person who came, collaborative projects where they stayed late working together alone, or any other activities that sound suspiciously like date activities happening under the cover of work context. She's not just engaging in normal workplace socialization, sir. She's spending one-on-one time with him in contexts that allow personal connection to develop. And whether or not she admits it, these activities are functioning as dates where they build intimacy and attraction away from the structure of work tasks. What this pattern reveals? This reveals they're creating opportunities to spend time together beyond what work requires, which indicates they both want more time together and are engineering situations that allow personal interaction under professional pretense. Co-workers who are just colleagues don't regularly grab lunch together alone, don't talk for an hour over coffee, and don't find excuses to stay late working together when the work could be done separately. Notice the frequency of these activities. If she's mentioning lunch with him multiple times a week, regular coffee breaks together, or frequent after-work interactions, the volume of time they're spending together reveals they're prioritizing each other's company in ways that exceed professional necessity. Pay attention to whether these activities are truly group activities or whether it's really just the two of them. She might say, "Some of us from work went for drinks," but when you ask who, it's him and maybe one other person who left early. The minimization of how much alone time they're actually spending together reveals she knows the one-on-one nature of these interactions is inappropriate. Watch whether she mentions personal conversations happening during these activities. If she references that they talked about their relationships, their childhoods, their dreams and goals, their frustrations and struggles. They're not having work discussions. They're having relationship-building conversations that create emotional intimacy. Notice if she's vague about the timing or duration of these activities. If she says she grabbed lunch without mentioning it was a 2-hour lunch, or she stayed a bit late to finish a project without mentioning they were alone together until 8 p.m., the vagueness conceals the extent of the time they're spending together, because she knows you'd object if you knew the full picture. Pay attention to whether you're invited to meet him or join these activities. If she never suggests you come to the happy hours or meet her for lunch where he'll be there, she's keeping you separate because she doesn't want you observing their dynamic and seeing the attraction that's obvious when they're together. Watch if she seems excited about these activities in ways she's not excited about spending time with you. If she's enthusiastic about tomorrow's lunch with him, but unenthusiastic about date night with you, the comparison reveals where her emotional energy and attraction are actually flowing. Notice if the activities are escalating in intimacy or frequency. If they went from occasionally eating in the break room together, to regularly leaving the office for lunch, to having drinks after work, to spending extra hours alone on projects, the progression shows intentional deepening of their relationship. Sign 4. She gets defensive. When you express concern about him, when you mention that she talks about him a lot, or express even mild concern about their relationship, and she responds with immediate defensiveness, anger, accusations that you're jealous, or controlling, or insistence that you're being ridiculous and they're just coworkers, she's not defending innocent friendship. She's protecting a relationship that means more to her than she's willing to admit. And the intensity of her defensive response reveals that your concerns hit close enough to truth that she feels threatened by your awareness and needs to shut down. You're questioning before you investigate further. What this pattern reveals? This reveals she knows the relationship has crossed or is crossing appropriate boundaries, and she's psychologically invested enough in it that she'll fight to protect it from your scrutiny. If the relationship were truly innocent and professional, she'd be able to calmly reassure you without the defensive intensity that reveals she's protecting something she values. Notice the speed and intensity of her defensive response. If you casually mention you talk about John a lot, and she immediately snaps back with anger or accusations, the disproportionate response reveals the comment threatens something she's protecting. Innocent people don't react defensively to innocent observations. Pay attention to whether she uses accusations of jealousy or insecurity to shut down the conversation. If she tells you you're being jealous, controlling, paranoid, or insecure rather than addressing the substance of your concern, she's using emotional manipulation to make you the problem so she doesn't have to address her inappropriate relationship. Watch whether she minimizes the relationship whenever you bring it up. If she suddenly describes him as just some guy at work, when moments before she was telling detailed stories about him, the minimization reveals she's trying to downplay the relationship's significance because she knows you're noticing it matters to her. Notice if she accuses you of not trusting her rather than addressing the specific behaviors you're concerned about. This framing makes the issue about your trust problems rather than her boundary violations, which conveniently avoids having to examine or change her behavior. Pay attention to whether she compares your concerns about this specific coworker to potential concerns about all her male coworkers. So I can't have any male friends at work is a deflection that treats your specific concern about a specific inappropriate relationship as if you're trying to control all her workplace relationships. Watch if she refuses to reduce contact or set clearer boundaries, even after you've expressed discomfort. If she insists on maintaining the same level of interaction, despite knowing it bothers you, she's prioritizing him over your comfort and the health of your relationship. Notice if she turns the conversation to your inadequacies rather than addressing her relationship with him. If your concern about her coworker becomes a conversation about how you don't trust her or how you're insecure, she's successfully redirected from her behavior to your supposed problems. Sign 5. You notice changes in her that coincide with spending more time with him. When she suddenly starts dressing better for work, caring more about her appearance on work days specifically, coming home energized and happy after days when she's seen him a lot, or exhibiting other behavioral and emotional changes that correlate with her time with him. She's not just experiencing general life improvements, she's responding to attraction and the emotional high that comes from being around someone who generates excitement, validation, and romantic feelings, and these changes reveal that he's becoming a source of happiness and motivation that you're not providing. What this pattern reveals? This reveals she's experiencing the emotional and physiological effects of attraction, and those effects are significant enough to change her behavior patterns. When people are attracted to someone, they want to look good for them. They feel energized by proximity to them, and they carry positive emotions from interactions with them into other areas of their life. Notice if she's putting more effort into her appearance on workdays than on weekends with you. If she's doing full hair and makeup, wearing her best outfits, and caring about her appearance for the office, but not making similar effort for dates with you, the comparison reveals who she's actually trying to look good for. Pay attention to her mood patterns. Is she happier, more energetic, and more positive on days when she spent time with him? Does she come home from work glowing on days when they had lunch together, but come home flat and tired on days when he wasn't there? The mood correlation reveals he's a source of positive emotional experiences that affect her overall state. Watch whether she's mentioned starting new self-improvement activities, like working out more, eating better, or developing new interests, and whether these coincide with increased time with him. If she's suddenly motivated to improve herself when she wasn't before, she's likely responding to attraction and wanting to be more attractive herself. Notice if she's less interested in intimacy with you while these changes are happening. If she's putting more effort into how she looks, seems happier and more energized, but none of that positive energy is directed toward you sexually or romantically, it reveals the energy is being generated by someone else and depleted before she gets home to you. Pay attention to whether she's more distracted, checking her phone more frequently, or seeming mentally absent when she's with you. If her mind is elsewhere, even when her body is with you, she's thinking about someone else, and that someone is likely him. Watch if she started mentioning things she learned from him, perspectives he shared, or ways he's influenced her thinking. If he's shaping her opinions and worldview, he's occupying significant mental space and influencing her in ways that indicate deep engagement with his thoughts and ideas. Notice if she's created more distance between you emotionally. If she's less open with you, shares less about her feelings, and seems less invested in emotional intimacy with you, while simultaneously seeming happier and more fulfilled, the emotional energy she used to invest in you is being invested elsewhere.